Hey guys, today we had two guests over from bol.com, Director of Engineering Mirko van Ede and Rogier Lommers, one of their tech leads. And we talked about their cloud journey because they're right in the middle of it. We talked about where they came from, the challenges, and where they're heading. These guys have been involved since the beginning. Enjoy.
Beyond Coding. Welcome to Beyond Coding, a dive into the world of successful people in IT. From your sponsors, Zebia, creating digital leaders. Here's your host, Patrick Akil.
Guys, welcome. How's it going?
Thanks. Yeah, doing fine. Thanks.
Doing fine? Great, man. Nice having you here. You guys are from bol.com, and I have no clue what you guys are doing behind the scenes. Now you have a lot of people working in different teams, though. So can you give us a little insight on what you're doing behind the scenes?
I think we can. Yeah, so bol.com is one of the largest online retailer in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Which shows, I think, from the numbers, right? So we have 30 million customers in the Netherlands and Belgium.
Yeah.
47,000 partners, and on an average day, like 34 million products for sale.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think also shows in the innovation department. So we have I think somewhere between 150 teams, Rogier.
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
Yeah, 750 people working in IT, and then it's excluding the product side of innovation.
Yeah,
and together they run, I think, over 1,000 microservices. So it's a pretty big landscape. It's a lot to do, actually.
Exactly.
It looks like a simple shop,
right?
You just buy something and then we ship it. But behind the scenes, there's so much going on. People have sometimes no clue about what we need to do to make this a smooth operation.
Yeah, I have no clue. And the numbers you laid out, those are actually huge numbers.
Yeah.
I think some of the biggest you'll probably see in Holland, just scale-wise and team-wise, people-wise.
Yeah, true. And also technology-wise, I think. So if you look at what that means for like the amount of traffic that our systems have to handle, I think that's also really pretty impressive.
Yeah.
As an example, so in the season, right? So around Black Fridays in the class, Christmas time, we have like 12,000 requests per second hitting our apps in our shop, but that sometimes translates to in the rest of the landscape to like 90,000 requests per second on some of the backend services. So it's scale wise also, I think, pretty big.
Yeah, a lot of companies prepare for those numbers, and they're like, well, this is what we expect, but you guys actually have that. You have the data to back that up. That's super cool.
Yeah, we prepare for more.
Yeah,
but,
obviously then you have to prepare for the next range.
Prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah, cool. So I invited you on to talk about your cloud journey, because obviously you started probably just like every other company way back when in a data center, or your own or a different one. You're now in the middle of your cloud journey. Where you guys, let's see, how do we want to kick this off? Can you guys please explain first where you came from and kind of where you are now in that cloud journey?
Yeah, so we came from, at the beginning, we were using a third party for all the hosting. Yeah. And then I think it was around 2011, 2012 when we said, okay, it's time to create our own data centers. Yeah. And back then we did that. It was a very big project, and I think
huge. Yeah, I can imagine.
And during that time, we started working for bol.com.
Yeah.
And in the end, we kept growing. Yeah. And at some point, we needed more scale. We needed more flexibility in terms of resourcing and elasticity. And that's where the cloud comes in.
Yeah, because buying another data center doesn't really make sense at some point.
No, and indeed. Yeah.
And if you're dealing with seasonality, you need something that can scale up on the fly.
Indeed, yeah. You want during all the peak moments, you want to be able to run a lot of services, and during the night a bit less. And all these things are easy in the cloud, but not that easy when you do it in your own data center.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then what was kind of the first step? You guys had the data center and you were kind of orientating what the cloud had to offer. You're like, well, this might be a good idea, so let's take that step. How did that first step look like?
I think we first ran into challenges, issues with our data. The amount of data that we had, because we had a big Hadoop cluster.
Yeah.
So it was either a really big investment in that, but we were not sure if that would be a sustainable way of scaling. So I think that's the maybe the first trigger for us to start looking for, hey, should we really be doing this ourselves, or are there maybe other companies that can do this much better?
Yeah.
Which turned out that we thought, there are companies that can do this much better, cloud providers that can help us with this. That was, I think, the first the first need that we had is the massive amount of data that we could not handle for much longer in our own data center.
Yeah, I can imagine that at some point the resources that you have are at maximum capacity, right? And if it goes over that, it's not really easy to add something on top of that to make sure that is in place.
And then you have to become also an expert in that, right? So you have to become an expert in running massive data clusters, and also you can wonder if that's what you want to be. If you're we want to be focused on partners and customers and making their lives better. And then investing a lot in this did not make sense. So we compared a lot of cloud providers before we made that choice. And then Google felt like, well, they're good at data, right? We all know. So we decided to go for that.
Yeah. And did you then take kind of a smaller piece of the pie, let's say, put that on the cloud and do a test with that? Or how did you guys tackle that?
Yeah, so data was also the first thing that we moved there.
Yeah.
So that was really our first migration, also the first one to finish. So almost all of our big data is in the cloud, but it's already there, I think, for maybe even 2 year and a half. Everything is there. Yeah. And then alongside, we started to think about what more can we get out of this, and how can we use this for the rest of the things that we do. Yeah.
So then data makes sense to me, right? Because the more you grow, the more data you're going to have, the more you want to analyze it, but it can grow so quickly. The more people you have, the bigger it grows, basically. And you want to keep what you have because you want to analyze trends, et cetera, and build on top of that. But then the existing stack that you had, did it send the data first and foremost to the cloud to have that there and kind of process there?
Yeah. It started with a concept, the Stanley concept, and so we asked all the teams to implement that, and to send all the events basically in a centralized way, to Google BigQuery.
Yeah, cool. And that's how you basically processed it. It's all in BigQuery. Yeah, that makes sense. And what was the next step then? Because you have data now, you're happy with what Google does with the data. It's stored there, it scales nicely. What was the next step then that you tackled?
Yeah, it scales nicely. It gives, let's say, business users, analysts, a really good way of getting insights themselves also without the need for innovation teams to help them out. Yeah. And then the next step, I think we started with simple services.
So compute, basically.
Compute.
Yeah. And those are usually owned by the teams that you have? Because I can already imagine, like, you have so many different teams. Did you pick one team and that was then moved to the cloud first to kind of do that experiment and see if it works well?
Yeah.
So a lot of teams. So for at least for me, back then I was in a we call it a feature team, so a development team. Yeah. Before the season started, all teams were working on: are you season ready? Are you able to handle the peak load? Are you? So that was quite a big chunk of the yearly investment. Yeah. Working on being season readiness. Yeah. Are the services okay? Do they need more hardware maybe? And all these questions are like, it took a lot of time.
I can imagine, yeah.
And when you're running in the cloud on a Kubernetes cluster, then you can scale up and scale down very easy.
Yeah.
So that was, I think, the biggest eye opener, at least for me back then when I was in a development team.
Yeah, that makes sense. Man, seasonality is a hard thing to prepare for.
Yeah.
Because you have just an assumption basically. Well, we're gonna hit these peaks, and are you ready for that? If not, we actually need to buy stuff to make sure that you are ready. If you're not ready, what happens? The website basically doesn't work, right? Or the feature doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
or
at
you're
least
going to get your package at home. Depends a bit on where it does not work.
That makes sense.
What happens?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But indeed, it's an assumption. We make an estimate of what front end load we will have.
Yeah.
And also what front end load in terms of what will the partners do, right? We're a marketplace, so we don't only sell our own goods, but we have like 47,000 partners selling their goods via us. So we make an estimation. Okay, what will the season mean in terms of that? How many customers? How many partners? How does that translate in number of requests per second?
Yeah,
and then the teams themselves have to translate that to if it starts there, then it goes a couple of steps through the landscape. It ends up in my own service. What does this mean for my own service?
Yeah,
and then you do tests, right? So you do load tests, see what can you handle and how do you need to scale up.
Yeah. So did you guys then lift and shift kind of what you had initially running, or did you kind of move and improve? I don't know if that's a term, but it makes sense.
Yeah. So the most of the simple services were able to lift and shift.
Yeah.
Which basically means run it in a Docker container instead of running it in your own data center. Run it on the Kubernetes cluster.
Yeah, so pretty much as is.
Yeah. And but for the more complex ones or the big ones, we choose to go cloud native.
Okay.
So which almost all the times means that you need to really think about what the system does, how can we split it up, and how can we change it so it really supports horizontal pod auto-scaling, for example. It's not that easy.
Yeah. So what do you mean by that, horizontal scaling?
I always have a metaphor for that.
Yeah.
For example, if you want to mow the lawn, then you need a machine for that, right?
Yeah.
And if you want to do it quicker, then you buy a quicker lawnmower.
Exactly.
But at some point, you have the biggest one, and then you can't go any faster. So then you're out of options.
Yeah.
So then it's better to invest in some kind of mechanism to connect small lawnmowers, so you can do it in parallel.
In that way.
And then you can scale infinitely, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. So at some point you have the best version of what you can have, and then the next best thing is having another version of that and another one, so you can actually work in parallel that way.
Exactly, and the same goes for software development. If you need to design your processes in such a way that you can easily divide the work into small packets of work.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's where the cloud comes in very handy.
Yeah, I get that. But then for that work, you would have to redo initially what you have, right? If you lift and shift, it kind of works as is, maybe in a different kind of jacket or a different format, but basically as is. But for the bigger, more complex things, you actually need to, well, first of all, know what you have, and first of all, know how the cloud can help you best in that way. How'd you guys tackle that then? Is it actually looking at what the cloud has to offer and kind of reworking your thing?
Yeah, it's both ways.
Yeah.
Knowing what the cloud offers, but also knowing your system.
Okay.
A nice use case or business case we had was our images. So all the images for the products we have on our website, we used to render and serve them from our own data center.
Okay.
And you have to imagine if a partner provides us an image, then we need to match it against our own product. Yeah. So we need to know the relationship between the incoming image and the product, and we need to render it and giving it a score, for example. And all these processes used to be one system. Yeah. But then we thought, okay, stop coding now, pick a whiteboard. How can we split it up? Yeah. And make it separate pieces, which are all horizontal scalable. Yeah. So if it gets busy with, imagine if a big plaza, if a big partner offers us his own full catalog, then the matching becomes very busy.
Exactly.
And now we are able to scale up the matcher on its own instead of scale up the whole service, which is responsible for everything.
Yeah, because suppliers, you want to match the supplier product under one product, right?
Correct.
For a consumer perspective, it doesn't really matter which supplier has which product. It's just the product I want it. Which supplier I get should basically be the best one.
Yeah.
And then each different supplier can also supply their own images, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Which means you basically have, if you have a lot of products, means you have even more ridiculous amounts of images.
Indeed. Yeah. And all these images need to be matched, scored, rendered, and eventually published to where the customers can get them from.
Yeah. That's awesome.
If you have this entire process in one service and this huge batch comes in, and you actually only need to scale up the matching. But if it's one service, you scale up. You also scale up the scoring. You scale up the rendering. Well, it's actually not necessary, right? You needed to scale up the matching. So you have to, and then that costs money, right? So you scale up something that you don't need. It's a waste of money. And well, we're a retailer. We don't mind spending money. Yeah. But we do kind of hate wasting money. So
for sure,
so you're looking at your system like that, say, okay, we maybe can make it even a bit smaller in smaller pieces. We can scale up when we need a certain part of the process to scale up, and not the other ones. Yeah, that's, I think, rethinking rethinking your software when you move to the cloud.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like how you just bit by bit explained on where you came from, what you've learned also. And that the elasticity and kind of the power of the scalability really helped you guys along the way. So where are you guys now in kind of that journey? Is it still like moving things over, kind of decoupling, as you mentioned, the image processing and shifting things?
Yeah, so where we are now is that so by default, and it's already for a while, new things that we do, we right away do that in the cloud. So you see that everything new since, let's say, a year or 2 years ago, we do that all in the cloud.
Yeah.
And and we moved some of the parts already to the cloud. So we are now I think 40% data center, 60% cloud. I think that would be my guess of where we are today.
Yeah.
But what we need to do is also, well, things are running in the data center. It works also fine, right? So you make your commits, you push it to production. Some of the services maybe you don't even touch too often.
Yeah.
So so looking in isolation to that, say, okay, why would we do that, right?
Yeah.
Why would make an investment of moving into the cloud? Maybe even rethinking our design.
Yeah.
Wow, it just works fine. I can just make changes and it's in production within 5 minutes. So, so that's where we are. But I think there is a big need to move it because, like, from a developer perspective, right? If you're a new developer, now maybe it doesn't even matter. If you work at bol.com, now we're still at the point that you have to learn 2 stacks, right?
Yeah.
You have to learn everything and all the tooling regarding our data center and
the cloud.
The cloud, right?
Yeah.
Everything that has been built since 2 years in your product is running in the cloud.
It's a big landscape then.
That's a big and complex thing to do. And if we want to make it easier for people, then we need to move to one stack. Also because so we have platform teams providing, let's say, the layer on which the other teams are building on top of that, right? So also there you have to keep 2 things running, the data center and the cloud. And the more we can focus on making one of the stacks easier and making the developer experience better, it makes more sense, right? To do one thing instead of 2. So that's, I think, where we are. We need to move that kind of, give people the perspective of, hey, okay, in isolation for you, okay, it might not be the best investment, but in the bigger picture, you really need to move there because then we can focus on one stack.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if you look at it black and white, doesn't really matter if it's as is, basically, if you don't really touch the data center landscape too much. But the amount of maintenance and the landscape complexity for developers and people that actually do the hands-on work, that is still there.
Yeah.
And if you can remove that, you'll probably have faster operating teams then.
Yeah. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Exactly. And we also considered like abstracting, making an abstraction layer, right? So that as a developer, you kind of would be unaware of where your service would be running, like either in the cloud or in the data center, or maybe even with another cloud provider.
Yeah.
That kind of also would remove that, right? In a way, for a developer, it would then feel like one stack.
Yeah.
Would have been an option too. Would have been a major investment as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And hard probably.
Yeah.
Because not everything you have in the cloud you have in the data center. About things would be complicated, so we decided not to do that. Really make use of the power that the cloud offers, to us, like out of the box, without us doing too much about it.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the benefits that we saw, right? So hey, Google, this cloud provider, does all the work for us.
Yeah.
And making a layer on top of that
doesn't really make sense.
No, you lose so much of the benefits.
Yeah.
And what we see is also that the simple ones, they are now running fully in the cloud, right?
Yeah.
But the more critical ones, you want to be able to have a controlled way of migrating them from DC to cloud.
Yeah.
And I also have a feeling that tooling like Istio, for example, really helps there.
Yeah.
Because we are now about to run Istio as a separate layer in the data center.
Okay.
Which basically means that you can connect from cloud to DC. It's one mesh.
Yeah.
Which gives the teams the opportunity to have that controlled way of migrating. First start, deploy it both in DC and in the cloud, and then route like 1% of all the traffic to your cloud instance, see how it behaves, how does scaling exactly work, and how does it basically get a feeling of how the cloud instances really work, and then you move more traffic towards cloud, and then that way you have a controlled way of migrating.
So that allows you to basically reroute part of the traffic that would normally go to the data center, and that would go then to the cloud version.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then you could basically scale up and see if it performs well before you do the whole shebang of migrating.
Yeah. And in our case, I'm not sure if that's also the case in other companies, but in our case, we used to, as a developer, as a software developer in a feature team, you never really worried about load balancing or about all the platform stuff, right? And when you're into cloud development, suddenly you have all that work is on your plate as well.
Absolutely.
So you have to get that knowledge. You have to know how it works before you can really start using it and get all the benefits of what the cloud brings.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because you guys mentioned you have so many like different teams operating at the on the stack basically, and the techniques that you use. I was wondering how they operate separate from each other, even with the example that you gave of the cloud, because you do need to know a lot of different things when you do cloud native development. How do teams, are they working together? Are they operating separately? What's the autonomy there?
So we try to combine a couple of teams in what we call a product.
Yeah.
So and a product, well, it's not, you're never completely independent, right? It's you're always part of a chain or a longer process.
Yeah, makes sense.
But we try to define these products in such a way that, like, let's say for 80% of the time, you can, with a couple of teams, like sometimes 2, sometimes 3, sometimes maybe 5. As a group of teams, you can more or less be independent in your choices that you make.
Yeah.
And then only for 20% of the time, hopefully you need to have conversation with other teams and make
align.
some. Yeah. And we try to also, we're also trying to reflect this organizational combination of stuff into a product in our landscape. So we're working towards, let's try then also to kind of have one API for all the other teams in the company, a product API we call that, kind of abstract all the different individual services away. So that makes you also even a bit more dependent, right? You have one API which you use to communicate with the outside world, the other teams most of the time, but sometimes also like the real outside world, like the customers or the end users. And that makes you even more independent in terms of what you do with your microservices behind that API.
It's hard. I'm trying to form a mental image of how that would work. But you basically have teams that operate on a feature or an aspect of a feature. And obviously they still need to align because they're part of the greater chain or greater feature that you have. But they can still operate like completely separately, like, right? You don't have a different team that does all the cloud work. They still do the development and the cloud aspect.
Yeah. So teams are like responsible from, the first line of code that you start to write up until running the service in production. So our teams typically get also the production alerts when something is wrong in production. And then you have to stop, working on your innovation, the new stuff that you're working on. First look at production. What's going on there, and fix that before you can continue adding new features. Yeah.
That's a bigger responsibility than initially, right? Because I think from a data center perspective, and these are just my assumptions, I don't think a developer was necessarily responsible for what was running on production.
Well,
in a way still, but maybe someone else would get the alert that would then, or how did that go?
Yeah. Well, okay. So in the very first phase, that when we joined the company, it was like 11 years ago.
Yeah.
Then we had this third party running the data center for us. We could do one release a month, sending them a zip file with instructions, unzip this here, and then copy this there, etc., etc. We'd be down, entire shop would be down like for 6 hours or so.
Literally a zip file, right?
Literally a zip file.
So kind of all or nothing, big bang.
Yeah, as a team, you had to write the instructions and then say, okay, you have to do this and that and this and that. Really cool.
Yeah.
And once a month. Then we moved to the... we in-housed our data center. We would take over that ownership, but pretty fast. I think that we gave teams there the option to run their own service in production as is, deploy when you want, at the time that you want, whenever you like to do it. But then also already then it came with a part of the production responsibility. So teams would in our own data center, they also get the alerts.
Yeah. And it was an option, so they could choose to...
We started with an option, and then later it became the default, and everybody, actually, after a while, everybody was doing it like that.
Cool.
And now, indeed, with the move to the cloud, I think even more responsibilities come to you. Like, for example, cost, right? You it's really clear now what you spend.
Mm-hmm.
The cloud spend, you can just get a bill and we can just say, okay, this is your cost, this is your system, this is your database, this is what you spend as a team or as a product. So more and more of these responsibilities indeed come to the team.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff that you had to do in the data center, in terms of operations, we don't have to do that anymore, right? Like, I don't know, there is no alert of a full disk in like a full physical disk, right? That goes to the cloud provider. We don't have to deal with that. A lot of the
hardware
anymore.
is automatic.
Yeah. So part of that is now on the plate of the cloud provider.
Yeah.
But indeed, it comes with more responsibilities for you as a team.
Yeah.
And then what we need to do is make it easier.
Absolutely.
That's, I think, a step that we are in the... We're doing that, so we're concerned about, product and the developer productivity, or not concerned about it, but we think, okay, we must make it easier to take this ownership in terms of, okay, a number of systems that you have to look into, setting up the alerts, the dashboards, and making really the operations easier for the feature teams.
Exactly. Then less digging means you can get to the problem sooner, which means you can fix it sooner as well.
Yeah.
No.
Don't do too much of the plumbing around setting up a good operations.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm always of the mindset that developers are never going to stop learning, right? Even with the cloud now, it brought up a whole box of tools that we can use but you have to take that and you have to take ownership of that. And you kind of need to master not all the aspects, but a lot of aspects to a certain degree as well. And if you're coming from a situation where, well, first of all, it was a third-party data store, then your own, but you're moving more towards that cloud, you do still need to learn a lot of what the cloud has to offer. How did you guys tackle that? Because a lot of teams, did they try a lot of things out, see what worked that way, and learn that way? Or did you kind of kickstart it by doing a lot of courses and a lot of knowledge sharing in that way?
Yeah, we have a lot of courses nowadays, and one of them is like, I think literally the name is "Bring My First Service to the Cloud." Which covers everything.
And that's an internal course?
Yeah,
cool.
An internal course which has a lot of sub-modules.
Yeah.
Some of them are externally, some of them are internally.
Yeah.
But the aim is bringing your own service, my Hello World service, to the cloud.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's about everything. So it's Kubernetes, it's about the tooling, it's about the HTML, it's about the data store, how you do all the provisioning.
Yeah.
So a lot of new stuff is coming towards the teams now.
Yeah.
And there are developers who really embrace that. And there are developers who kind of a bit of hesitant. But at some point they see, oh, this is really cool, because now I can, when there's something going wrong, I can shell into the container and I can enable debug logging for the sidecar, for example.
Yeah, you have a lot more options.
Yeah, which is really powerful, but for some people it takes a while before they realize that.
Yeah, it's kind of new and the unknown.
Yeah.
So I think it's also human that you're like, well, I'm kind of afraid of taking that first step.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But it's a typical, I don't know, how do you call it? Like the technology adaptation curve, right? You have the first movers, people really enthusiastic, and then slowly more people join, and then you have the people that are still a bit lagging behind.
Yeah.
You have to help them, I think. That's what we do. We really try to help people with the courses, but also with hands-on help to make that step.
Yeah. Interesting. In kind of that journey and along the way so far, have you tried things out that you're now like, absolutely don't do that because that doesn't work at all, or we thought that worked and we tried it? Was it always kind of gradually the right way? I mean, you always have a lot of options, right?
Yeah. So probably we did. I'm pretty sure we did. And I'm thinking of an example that comes to mind, because what we also try to do is fail fast, right? So then before we have to revert it for 1,000 services. So
I can give an example.
Cool.
I always go back to my images project, which is fully cloud native. And at first, we didn't wear that native mindset.
Okay.
When we designed that system.
Yeah.
And then indeed, when a peak arrives, so a partner offers a lot of images.
Yeah.
Then at first we thought, okay, let's make use of Kubernetes to do the scaling up and scaling down.
Yeah.
But back then we also thought, maybe there's a better way by maybe doing it even more cloud native by using cloud functions. Because rendering an image it's not rocket science, right? It's there's the original.
Yeah.
You specify what you want in terms of a target image, and then that's it.
Yeah.
It's basically one function.
Yeah.
So why not deploy that one function and let the cloud provider do all the scaling up and the scaling down?
Yeah.
So we did, and then so we didn't have to worry about anything. The only thing was deploying that single function, and everything worked fine. So it really made the whole solution less complex.
Yeah.
So I think being cloud native is crucial.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of try that all the components which the cloud offers.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because the hard part is you have a lot of options, right? And there's not necessarily a right or a wrong one. There's just better ones and less good ones. So then you try things out. And I like that you mentioned that we have kind of you have kind of a fail fast mindset in that way. And that experimenting is so crucial and seeing if things work out or not.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. And then I think what's also crucial and what's also hard is sharing the lessons that you learned in your team with the other teams, right? Because ideally, people can learn from your mistakes, and then they don't have to make that same mistake again. So we pay a lot of attention to that too, so like sharing your new of what your learnings, what you've done, what worked, what did not work.
Yeah.
Pretty sure people also make some of the same mistakes that others also did.
At some point, you're like,
maybe unavoidable.
Let me try this out.
And sometimes you need that to write the learning curve. You need that maybe to see it for yourself. But it is, and it depends also really all on the context. What is a good choice, right? And the context is different for every team in terms of characteristics of your service, and that makes it also hard. It's not like make a decision diagram, like you answer a couple of questions and then then this is your setup.
Exactly. It's not that black and white.
No, it's not that black and white.
Yeah. Do you guys have kind of a structured way of that knowledge sharing, or do teams kind of do that automatically?
We have sessions for that, so we try to do that. We have a group of what we call tech leads. So every product has a tech lead. Yeah. Which form kind of a network, right? That's a smaller group than everybody. So it's easier for them to find each other, and that makes it also easier to share that knowledge between the different products. So a combination of things. And we also have the trainings and where we try to collect this knowledge. And some of the documentation that we try to set up when we've discovered this works and this does not work.
Yeah.
And of course, we have our summit, our own conference each year.
Okay.
Where a lot of colleagues and external people nowadays talk about their experiences and share nice stories about their journey to the cloud. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. It's one of my favorite things is as a developer, it's just the community, right? It's a community that's so open and willing to share. Because we always need to know new stuff. So then we try and share that to make sure others don't make the same same mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool, man. Over the journey of your cloud transition still, you already laid out some of the challenges that are still there in kind of that 60-40 ratio that you have and the part that you still want to migrate over just to make the landscape and everything and the onboarding less complex for developers. What are some of the other challenges that still lie ahead that you foresee? Still a big question.
It's a big question.
Yeah.
Because I think this one is one of the most important ones, and then probably from there, we new challenges will probably arise. Yeah. I think this is the biggest one. The rest of them just follow from that. So the things that we mentioned, I think those are challenges like developer productivity, setting up good operations. That's also maybe one of the things we did not mention. So shifting the operations like almost fully to the development teams. Yeah. What we're doing right now, that's also operations is also a way of thinking, right? That as a software engineer, that's not typically or at least I'll talk for myself, but I see that more often. It's not typically the first thing that is in your top. It's not your top priority. I think, given the past that we come from. Yeah, and that's something I think this operations mindset, translating that, bringing that to the teams, operations conscious. I think that's also one of the challenges that we are facing because we used to have this platform/operations department. Yeah. Well, those people were really operations minded. So, that's just asking, what if that breaks? And then 5 times, right? But if that breaks too, and if that fails too, and if that fails too. Yeah. And that mindset of thinking what could possibly go wrong, but then in the worst way. Yeah. Yeah, that's something I think that's also a challenge that we have to bring to the teams and get that operational mindset a bit more there.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I come from an operational background actually, and then I made a shift towards development because I was like, I know how to fix this. I just can't because I'm in operations. So that operations mindset I think is already ingrained in me. But as you lay it out, if you're never responsible for that, it's going to be hard kind of fitting that in and being like, well, I actually own my stuff now. It's going to run. What happens if X, Y, and Z? Do we have fallbacks, yes or no? And what happens then?
Yeah.
That's a hard one, I think. That's a hard one to instill then, because you need to experience it, especially that one. Or you need to hire people that already have that mindset. But I mean, hiring is hard.
Yeah. So we're starting what we call system reliability engineering teams.
Yeah. And those
are kind of a conscious. Yeah. So it's a conscious, a bit more local, so to say. It's not a central department, but teams divided over the other teams. Right?
Yeah.
They sit amongst them.
Yeah.
As a conscious, and help them with running smooth operations and bringing that mindset.
Yeah.
To the rest of the developers.
Yeah. To a mature level that you wanted it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting one. I didn't think of that one. That one's very important.
Yeah. Absolutely. Sure. Yeah.
And in kind of as a final question, you're now in the middle of kind of that cloud journey. Do you already have in mind what's going to be next? Let's say you have moved everything to the cloud. Then you have fully autonomous teams that have their own services or a couple of services they're responsible for. What's then next? Because I think right now, that's the biggest shift an organization can go through, moving from kind of an on-prem setup to the actual cloud.
Yeah. I'm not sure if we have a big idea behind that.
Yeah.
One of the things that comes to mind for me is that, so we deliberately choose to make full use of what our cloud provider offers, right? So you hear a lot of people also talking about being cloud agnostic, because that makes you less dependent and makes it maybe easier to shift to other providers.
Yeah.
We don't believe in that.
Yeah.
Because it really either it restricts you to the overlap of what the different cloud providers offer, right? And then and that's not too much.
Yeah.
Right. It's, I don't know, Kubernetes and maybe databases, and that's kind of what they have in common. And then you kind of restrict yourself to that, or you have to make this abstraction layer to kind of abstract the difference between the cloud providers. Where we did not choose for that. We choose to we see the benefits of this, of making use of a cloud provider. Then let's really make use of the cloud provider.
Yeah. Makes sense if you put all that effort into that cloud provider. Actually use it.
Yeah, let's make use of it, right? Yeah, they do so much work for us. They do innovation. Yeah. They make new things that we could never do ourselves. So let's make use to the max of that, without doing it using different components for the sake of using different components, right? So if we don't have to, let's not do it, because the easier we keep our technology stack, the better. But maybe one of the things that you could do after that is, starting to bit of taking on the learning curve of another cloud provider. I'm not sure if we're going to do that, but could be one of the options. Okay, let's learn a bit of one of the other cloud providers, see if we can maybe they also have things that our current cloud provider does not offer, right? So maybe we can even make use of it. So it could be something that's after that. But to be quite honest, would be really a success, right? If we're in at the point in time that we can start thinking about that. We're not worried too much about it yet. Yeah. Let's make this step, finish this step first. And I think that kind of consumes all of our time thinking.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I love that you still lay out then that you always have options, right? And you're just going to do the same thing that you did with the cloud and kind of seeing if it's a good option for you guys. Fail fast and then learn from that. Yeah, I really like that mindset.
Yeah,
cool, man. I want to thank you guys for coming on. I had a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it too.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, no problem, man. I hope to hear back from your cloud journey and see where it ends up.
Yeah, maybe we can come back in a year or two and then tell you where we are.
That'd be fun, man. All right, thanks, guys. Mirko and Rogier, everyone.
From your sponsors, Zebia, creating digital leaders.